The glass elevator in the pinnacle tower moved smoothly upward, carrying Raj Mehta toward his penthouse suite on the 58th floor. Outside the transparent walls, the city lights sparkled like fallen stars against the evening sky. Raj barely noticed. His eyes were fixed on his phone, fingers tapping out another email to his executive team. At 36, Raj had built his tech company from nothing into a billion-dollar enterprise. His days were filled with meetings, his evenings with networking events, and what little remained belonged to his laptop. Success had become his closest companion, and loneliness its shadow. Tonight was no different. He'd just closed another major acquisition, adding yet another company to his growing empire. The celebration dinner with his board members had been lavish but hollow, champagne toasts and practiced smiles. Now, all Raj wanted was to kick off his Italian leather shoes and collapse into bed. The elevator hummed quietly as it ascended. Floor 43, 44, 45. Then came the jolt. Raj stumbled, his phone slipping from his grasp and clattering to the floor. The elevator shuddered violently before grinding to a complete stop between the 46th and 47th floors. For a moment, Raj simply stood there, confused. Then reality set in. He was stuck. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered, picking up his phone. The screen had cracked, a spider web of fractures spreading across the glass. Perfect. Just perfect. He jabbed at the emergency call button. Nothing happened. He tried again, pressing harder. Still nothing. The small screen that usually displayed the floor numbers had gone dark. Raj felt a flicker of panic. He tried his phone, but the signal bars showed nothing. Of course, he was essentially in a metal box suspended between floors. "Hello?" he called out, hoping someone might hear him. "Is anyone there?" The elevator's stuck. His voice echoed off the glass walls. Silence answered him. Loosening his tie, Raj took a deep breath. "Don't panic. This is just an inconvenience. Someone would notice eventually." The building had security guards, maintenance staff. They'd get him out. 15 minutes passed. Then 30. Raj had tried everything, shouting, pressing all the buttons, even attempting to pry the doors open with his bare hands. Nothing worked. He slid down against the wall, resignation setting in. His phone battery was at 12% now. He should conserve it, but boredom and frustration drove him to check his emails once more through the cracked screen. That's when he heard it, a faint tapping from above. Raj jumped to his feet. "Hello? I'm stuck in here." The ceiling panel of the elevator shifted slightly, and a voice called down, "Stand back. I'm coming in." Raj pressed himself against the wall as the panel was pushed aside. A pair of legs appeared, then a torso, and finally, a woman dropped gracefully into the elevator beside him. She was dressed in what appeared to be a maintenance uniform, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. A tool belt was secured around her waist, and a flashlight was clipped to her pocket. What struck Raj most, however, were her eyes, bright and intelligent, assessing the situation with calm efficiency. "Are you okay?" she asked, dusting off her hands. "I'm fine," Raj replied, strangely flustered. "Just stuck. For almost an hour now. The power surge knocked out half the building's systems," she explained, kneeling to examine the control panel. "Including the emergency communication in the elevators. I've been checking them one by one." Raj watched as she opened the panel with a small screwdriver, revealing a tangle of wires. "You work in maintenance?" he asked. A slight smile crossed her face. "Something like that." Her hands moved with confidence among the wires. "I'm Priya, by the way." "Raj," he replied, automatically extending his hand before realizing how formal that seemed in their current situation. But she shook it anyway, her grip firm. Nice to meet you, Raj. Though I'm guessing you'd prefer different circumstances. Definitely. He chuckled, surprised at how quickly his anxiety had faded since her arrival. So how long until we get out of here? Priya shined her flashlight deeper into the control panel. That depends. The main power is still out, and the backup generators are only running essential systems. The elevator's mechanical release is jammed, too. She glanced up at him. Looks like we might be here a while. Raj felt his heart sink. How long is a while? Hard to say. The maintenance team is working on restoring power, but it could be an hour. Maybe more. An hour. Raj checked his watch, nearly midnight already. He had an important investor meeting at 7 the next morning. He needed to prepare, to review the presentation, to get some sleep. There has to be a way out, he insisted, pacing the small space. Can't we climb up through the hatch you came in? Priya shook her head. Not safely. The elevator shaft isn't stable right now. That's why I came in, to prevent anyone from trying exactly that. So we're just stuck here? That's it? For now, she said calmly. Getting frustrated won't make the power come back any faster. Raj ran a hand through his hair, trying to contain his impatience. He wasn't used to situations he couldn't control, problems he couldn't solve with money or influence. Look, Priya said, sitting down on the floor and leaning against the wall. We might as well get comfortable. Tell me about yourself. What keeps you working so late? Raj hesitated, then reluctantly joined her on the floor. Acquisition deal. My company just bought out a smaller tech firm. Congratulations, she said. What company do you work for? Innovate Solutions. I'm the founder and CEO. Recognition flickered in her eyes. Wait, Raj Mehta? The Raj Mehta? He nodded, accustomed to this reaction. People usually became either overly impressed or strangely nervous when they realized who he was. Priya, however, simply said, interesting. What about you? Raj asked, finding himself genuinely curious. How did you end up checking elevators in the middle of the night? It's complicated, she replied, with a smile that suggested there was more to the story. Let's just say I know my way around electrical systems. Something about her was different from the people Raj usually encountered in his daily life. She seemed completely unimpressed by who he was, treating him not as a billionaire CEO but simply as another person stuck in an elevator. As they talked, Raj found himself relaxing. Priya had an easy way about her, asking thoughtful questions and listening to his answers without the agenda he'd come to expect from others. She didn't check her phone or glance at the time. She was simply present. So that's the secret to building a tech empire, she said after he'd explained how he'd started his company in his parents' garage 10 years ago. Persistence and a good idea. And luck, Raj added. Being in the right place at the right time. Like being stuck in an elevator? She grinned. Raj laughed. I wouldn't call this lucky. I don't know, Priya said thoughtfully. Sometimes interruptions to our carefully planned lives are exactly what we need. Their conversation flowed naturally, jumping from topic to topic. Raj couldn't remember the last time he'd talked to someone without checking the time, without thinking about what he needed to do next. In the strange limbo of the stalled elevator, suspended between floors in the darkened building, time itself seemed to have paused. You never really answered my question, Raj said eventually. About what you do. If you know electrical systems so well, I'm guessing you're not just maintenance. Priya hesitated, then reached into her pocket and pulled out an ID card. I'm actually an electrical engineer. I designed the system for this building. When the power surge happened, I was called in to consult. Raj took the card, studying it in the dim emergency light. The logo at the top was for RK Engineering, one of the most prestigious firms in the city. And Priya wasn't just any engineer. According to her title, she was the head of their skyscraper division. "You're the one who designed the electrical grid for this entire building?" he asked, impressed. She nodded, taking back the card. "This was one of my first major projects after starting my own division within the firm." "So you're essentially the only person who could fix this?" "Pretty much," she admitted. "Though I didn't expect to be doing hands-on troubleshooting in the middle of the night wearing this." She gestured to her maintenance uniform. "I was at a dinner when they called me. This was all they had available when I got here." Raj found himself fascinated. Here was someone who, like him, had built something significant. But unlike him, she seemed completely at ease with herself, untroubled by the demands of success. The conversation shifted again, moving from careers to travel, books they'd read, places they'd seen. Raj discovered that Priya had backpacked through South America after college, that she played the violin, that she volunteered teaching engineering to high school girls on weekends. His phone battery died an hour into their conversation, and strangely, he didn't care. For the first time in years, he was fully present, without digital distractions, without the constant pull of his responsibilities. When the lights suddenly flickered back to life and the elevator hummed with renewed power, Raj felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. Their time in this suspended reality was coming to an end. "Looks like they got it working," Priya said, standing up and brushing off her uniform. She pressed the button for the lobby, and the elevator smoothly resumed its journey, bypassing Raj's original destination. "I need to check that the system is stable," she explained. "Make sure all the elevators are functioning properly before letting people use them again." Raj nodded, suddenly aware that in just moments, they would part ways. She would return to her world, and he to his. The thought bothered him more than it should have. As the elevator descended, Raj found himself searching for a way to extend their connection beyond this chance encounter. He, who negotiated million-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, felt oddly nervous about asking a simple question. The elevator doors opened onto the quiet lobby. A security guard looked up in surprise, then recognition as he spotted Raj. "Mr. Mehta. We've been looking everywhere for you. Are you all right, sir?" "I'm fine," Raj replied, stepping out of the elevator. He turned to Priya. "Thanks to." But she was already heading toward a group of maintenance workers across the lobby, her focus shifting to the next task at hand. Raj hesitated, then made a decision. He wasn't going to let this connection, unexpected as it was, simply fade away. Raj weaved through the small crowd in the lobby, ignoring the security guard calling after him. His eyes were fixed on Priya as she spoke with the maintenance crew, her hands moving animatedly as she explained something technical. He approached just as the group dispersed, each worker heading off with clear instructions. "Priya," he called, catching her attention. She turned, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. "Raj. I thought you'd be heading up to your penthouse by now." "I wanted to thank you properly," he said. "For getting me out of there. And for making what could have been a miserable experience into something, not miserable." A smile touched her lips. "High praise indeed." "Let me take you to dinner," Raj said, the words tumbling out before he could overthink them. "To show my appreciation." Priya raised an eyebrow. "It's nearly 2 in the morning. Breakfast, then. Or lunch. Or whenever you're free." He felt uncharacteristically flustered. "I know a great place that—" "Why?" she interrupted, her direct gaze meeting his. The question caught him off guard. "Why what? Why do you want to have a meal with me? Because you feel obligated? Or because I'm the head of engineering at a firm your company might want to work with someday?" Raj blinked, taken aback by her frankness. In his world, people rarely questioned his motives so directly. "Neither," he answered honestly. "I enjoyed talking with you. That doesn't happen often in my life. Priya studied him for a moment, as if assessing the truth of his words. Then she pulled out her phone. Give me your number. My phone still works, unlike yours, she added with a small smile. Raj recited his number, feeling an unexpected sense of victory as she typed it in. I'll text you, she said, slipping the phone back into her pocket. But right now, I need to finish getting this building back online. Of course. Raj nodded, suddenly aware of how tired he was. The adrenaline of being trapped and then meeting Priya had kept him going, but now exhaustion was catching up to him. They parted ways with a simple goodbye, but as Raj finally made his way to his penthouse in a now functioning elevator, he found himself hoping she would actually call. The next morning arrived too quickly. Raj's alarm blared at 6, giving him barely 4 hours of sleep. His first thought, strangely, wasn't of the investor meeting but of Priya. He checked his phone, no messages from the unknown number he hoped to see. Pushing aside his disappointment, he showered and dressed, reviewing his presentation notes while his driver took him to the office. The meeting went well, it always did, but Raj found his mind drifting throughout the day. To dark eyes and a confident smile, to conversations in a suspended elevator. It was nearly evening when his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Still interested in that meal? I hear the cafe on the ground floor of your building makes decent sandwiches. I'll be there at 7 if you're free. Priya. Raj read the message twice, a smile spreading across his face. He cancelled his dinner with potential investors without a second thought. The cafe was small and unpretentious, nothing like the high-end restaurants Raj usually frequented. Priya was already there when he arrived, dressed not in the maintenance uniform but in simple jeans and a blue blouse, her hair falling loose around her shoulders. You look different, he said as he sat down across from her. So do you, she replied. Less panicked. He laughed. Amazing what not being trapped in an elevator can do for one's demeanor. Conversation flowed easily between them, picking up where they had left off in the elevator. Raj found himself talking about things he rarely discussed. His childhood in a middle-class neighborhood, his parents' initial skepticism about his business ideas, the loneliness that had crept in as his success grew. It's like the higher I climb, the fewer real connections I have, he admitted, surprising himself with his candor. Priya nodded thoughtfully. Success often creates distance. People see the position, not the person. But you don't, Raj said. You treated me exactly the same before and after you knew who I was. Should I have treated you differently? She asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. No, Raj replied. That's exactly what made it refreshing. As they finished their surprisingly good sandwiches, Raj realized he didn't want the evening to end. There was something about Priya that made him feel more like himself than he had in years. Would you like to take a walk? He suggested as they stepped outside. There's a park not far from here. Priya checked her watch, then nodded. I'd like that. The evening air was cool as they strolled side by side, their conversation never lagging. Raj found himself wondering if this was how normal people dated, without the complications of wealth and status, without the second-guessing of motives. As they reached a small fountain in the center of the park, Priya turned to him. I should be getting home. Raj nodded, feeling a pang of disappointment. Can I see you again? Her smile was genuine but cautious. Maybe. But Raj, I should tell you something. Priya paused, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The fountain bubbled softly beside them, the sound filling the momentary silence. Raj felt a tightness in his chest. In his experience, sentences that started this way rarely ended well. I'm leaving for Singapore next week, she finally said. My firm is opening a new office there, and I'll be heading the operation. It's a 6-month assignment, minimum. Relief washed over Raj, followed immediately by disappointment. 6 months? She nodded. It's a huge opportunity. One I've been working toward for years. That's great, Raj said, meaning it despite his disappointment. Congratulations. Thank you. Priya's eyes searched his face. I just wanted to be upfront. Before. She gestured vaguely between them. Before this goes anywhere, Raj finished for her. Exactly. They stood in silence for a moment, the implications hanging in the air between them. 6 months was a long time. Long enough for whatever spark existed between them to fade into nothing more than a strange memory of a night stuck in an elevator. Well, Raj said finally, Singapore isn't that far. And I happen to own a jet. A small smile played at the corners of Priya's mouth. Is that your solution to everything? Throw money at it? Not everything, he replied. But when it comes to distance, it does help. Priya laughed, the sound warm in the cool evening air. I appreciate the thought, but my schedule will be packed. 60-hour weeks, at minimum. I understand busy schedules, Raj said. I live one. They began walking again, their steps slow and measured as if both were reluctant to reach the end of the path. What if, Raj began, an idea forming, I have business in Singapore. My company has been looking to expand in Southeast Asia. Priya gave him a sidelong glance. Do you really have business there, or would you manufacture some? Her directness still caught him off guard, but he was coming to appreciate it. A bit of both, he admitted. We've been considering Singapore as a potential location for our Asia headquarters. But I might accelerate those plans. They reached the edge of the park, where the peaceful greenery gave way to the busy city streets. Priya stopped, turning to face him. Raj, I like you. More than I expected to after our elevator adventure. But I don't want you rearranging your business plans for someone you just met. What if it's good business and good personal life all at once, he countered. Those opportunities are rare. I've learned to recognize them. Something in his voice must have convinced her because her expression softened. If you happen to be in Singapore, call me. I can't promise much time, but it's something, Raj finished. I'll take it. They exchanged a gentle smile, both aware they were navigating unfamiliar territory. As successful as they both were in their professional lives, this personal connection felt fragile and new. A taxi approached, and Priya raised her hand to hail it. As it pulled to the curb, she turned to Raj once more. I'm glad the elevator broke down, she said. Best malfunction of my life, he agreed. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibilities. Then, making a decision, Priya leaned forward and pressed a quick kiss to his cheek. Goodbye, Raj. For now. He watched as she slipped into the taxi and disappeared into the night traffic, feeling as though something significant had just begun, despite the impending separation. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of meetings and decisions. Raj threw himself into researching the Singapore market with an intensity that surprised even his executive team. What had been a vague 5-year plan suddenly became an immediate priority. His assistant, Nisha, eyed him suspiciously as he pored over reports late one evening. So we're really doing this Singapore expansion now? She asked, placing another stack of documents on his desk. What changed? Raj looked up, choosing his words carefully. The market conditions are favorable. It's good timing. Nisha raised an eyebrow. This wouldn't have anything to do with that woman from the elevator incident, would it? The one you cancelled the investor dinner for? Raj tried to keep his expression neutral. That's not relevant to the business decision. Of course not, Nisha replied, not bothering to hide her skepticism. Well, the board is on board. Preliminary paperwork is done. We can have you in Singapore by next Tuesday if you want. Next Tuesday. 3 days after Priya's scheduled departure. Raj felt a flutter of anticipation. "Tuesday works," he said, trying to sound casual. "Book it." As Nisha left his office, Raj pulled out his phone. He and Priya had exchanged a few texts since their walk in the park, nothing substantial, just enough to keep the connection alive. He typed a simple message, "Ever given a tour of Singapore to a potential investor?" Priya's response came hours later, when Raj was already home, "Depends on the investor. Tuesday, 8 p.m. Marina Bay. Don't be late." Raj smiled at his phone screen, rereading the message several times before setting it aside. For a man who regularly closed multi-million-dollar deals, it was surprising how much satisfaction he felt from securing a simple dinner date. Singapore greeted Raj with humid heat and blinding sunshine as he stepped off his private jet. The next 36 hours dissolved into a whirlwind of meetings, property viewings, and negotiations. His team was surprised by his hands-on approach to this expansion. Usually, he delegated the groundwork, but no one questioned his sudden interest in the details. By Tuesday evening, Raj was exhausted but energized. He stood at the designated meeting spot along Marina Bay, watching the sunset paint the sky in vibrant oranges and pinks. The city's skyline glittered with early evening lights, reflecting off the water. "Impressed?" Priya's voice came from behind him. Raj turned to find her standing there in a simple blue dress, looking far more relaxed than he felt in his business suit. "By the view or by your punctuality?" he asked, smiling. "Both deserve admiration," she replied with a hint of playfulness. They fell into step beside each other, walking along the promenade as Priya pointed out architectural features of the skyline. Her knowledge of the buildings and their design was impressive, and Raj found himself genuinely interested in her explanations. "How's the new job going?" he asked as they settled at a small outdoor restaurant overlooking the water. "Challenging," she admitted. "Good challenging, mostly. The team here is brilliant, but there are cultural adjustments. Everything operates differently." She paused, studying him. "And your business ventures? Genuinely promising, or just an excuse to be here?" Raj appreciated her directness. "Both," he answered honestly. "The opportunity is real. We've signed a lease on office space today, and interviews for local staff begin next week." He took a sip of water. "But yes, seeing you was a significant motivator." Priya nodded, accepting his candor. "How long are you staying?" 3 days, this trip. But I'll be back next month for a week. And probably monthly after that until the office is up and running." "Convenient," she said, but her smile suggested she wasn't opposed to the arrangement. Dinner passed pleasantly, their conversation flowing as easily as it had back in New York. Raj noticed how Priya's eyes lit up when she talked about her work, how her hands moved expressively when explaining complex concepts. There was something refreshing about her passion for her field that went beyond career ambition. "You really love what you do," he observed. "I do," she agreed. "Don't you?" The question gave Raj pause. "I love building something successful," he said finally. "Solving problems. Making impact. But lately..." He hesitated, surprised at his own willingness to be vulnerable. "Lately it's felt more like running on a treadmill. Faster and faster, but not actually going anywhere new." Priya's gaze was thoughtful. "What would somewhere new look like for you?" No one had asked him that in years. Raj had been so focused on growth metrics and acquisition targets that he'd stopped questioning the purpose behind it all. "I'm not sure," he admitted. "That's part of the problem." After dinner, they walked along the waterfront again, the night air still warm but pleasant. Street performers entertained tourists, and the lights of the city created a magical atmosphere. "I have meetings starting at 7 tomorrow," Raj said reluctantly as their walk brought them back to where they'd started. "And I have a 6 a.m. conference call," Priya replied. They stood facing each other, both hesitant to end the evening. When you come back next month, Priya began, I could show you more of the city. The parts tourists don't usually see. I'd like that, Raj said, feeling oddly youthful in his excitement. This time, it was Raj who leaned forward, placing a gentle kiss on her cheek. Good night, Priya. As they parted ways, Raj felt lighter somehow. The weight of constant achievement and endless ambition seemed less important than it had just days ago. Back in his hotel room, Raj's phone buzzed with messages from his executive team, questions about timelines, budgets, staffing for the Singapore office. Important decisions awaited his input. But for the first time in years, work wasn't the last thing on his mind before sleep. Instead, he thought of intelligent eyes and challenging questions, of someone who saw him not as a business titan but simply as a man finding his way. His phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Priya, made it home safely. Thanks for dinner. It was good to see a familiar face in a new city. Raj typed back, the pleasure was mine. Looking forward to seeing those hidden parts of Singapore next month. As he set his phone aside, Raj realized something had shifted within him. Singapore was no longer just another market to conquer, it had become something else entirely, a beginning. 1 month turned to 3. Raj's trips to Singapore became a regular part of his schedule, no longer raising eyebrows among his executive team. The Singapore office was taking shape, a glass and steel space with panoramic views of the city, already staffed with a small but growing team. But it wasn't just business bringing Raj back. Each visit included time carved out for Priya, precious hours stolen from packed schedules. They explored hidden temples tucked between skyscrapers, ate at tiny food stalls Raj would never have found on his own, and walked through lush gardens where the city's noise faded to a distant hum. Through Priya's eyes, Singapore became more than just another business outpost, it became a place of discovery. Between visits, they messaged daily. Simple texts about everyday moments, articles they found interesting, occasional video calls when time zones aligned. The distance that should have been an obstacle instead created a unique space for them to know each other beyond physical presence. On a warm Thursday evening, 4 months into their strange, transcontinental relationship, Raj sat in his New York office, staring out at the city lights. His phone buzzed with a message from Priya, got the Tanjong project. The one I told you about last month. Raj smiled, remembering her excitement about potentially leading a major infrastructure design. Congratulations. We should celebrate when I'm there next week, he typed back. 3 dots appeared as she began typing, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, about that. I need to talk to you about something. Raj felt a twinge of concern. Is everything okay? Want to call instead? No time now. Heading into a meeting. Tell you when you're here. The cryptic message lingered in Raj's mind over the next few days. By the time his plane touched down in Singapore the following Tuesday, his imagination had conjured countless scenarios, most of them unpleasant. Priya met him at his hotel lobby, her smile genuine but tinged with something he couldn't quite identify. They walked to a quiet restaurant nearby, making small talk that danced around whatever she needed to discuss. Finally, after they'd ordered, Raj couldn't wait any longer. So, what is it you wanted to talk about? Priya took a deep breath. The Tanjong project is a big deal for me. Career-defining. That's great, Raj said cautiously, sensing there was more. It's also a 3-year commitment, minimum. Priya met his eyes directly. They want me to stay in Singapore. Permanently. The words hung between them. What had been a temporary arrangement, a 6-month assignment that they could navigate with frequent visits, had suddenly become something much more substantial. I see, Raj said, his mind racing. And you're accepting? It's what I've worked for my entire career, Priya replied. The chance to lead from concept to completion, with full creative control. Raj nodded, understanding completely. He'd made similar choices himself, prioritizing his company's growth above all else. "You have to take it." "I know," she said softly. But it changes things for us," he finished. The waiter arrived with their food, creating a momentary pause in the conversation. When he left, Priya spoke again. "I care about you, Raj. These past few months have been unexpected. Wonderful. But I don't want either of us making promises we can't keep. The reality is I'll be here, building something that demands everything I have. And I'll be in New York," Raj added, doing the same. They ate in contemplative silence for a few moments, both wrestling with the practical challenges facing them. "Unless," Raj began, then stopped. "Unless what?" Priya prompted. "Unless I wasn't in New York." Priya set down her fork. "What are you saying?" Raj hadn't planned this, hadn't even consciously considered it until the words were forming. But as he spoke, he realized the truth in them. "The Singapore office is doing well. Better than projected. We need someone senior to oversee Asia operations." "And that would be you?" Priya asked, her expression cautious. "It could be," Raj said, the idea taking shape as he spoke. "I've been thinking about stepping back from day-to-day operations in New York anyway. Grooming my COO to take on more. This might be the right time." Priya studied him carefully. "I don't want you making a business decision based on this." She gestured between them. "It wouldn't be just for us," Raj replied honestly. "But I won't pretend you're not a factor. Meeting you made me realize something was missing in my life. Something no amount of success could fill." "Connection," Priya said quietly. "Exactly." Raj reached across the table, taking her hand. "I'm not proposing we move in together or make lifetime commitments. Just that we give ourselves a real chance, without an ocean between us." Priya's fingers tightened around his. "It's a big change, for both of us." "Change can be good," Raj said, thinking of a stalled elevator that had altered his course in ways he never could have imagined. "Sometimes, the best things happen when our carefully planned lives get interrupted." A slow smile spread across Priya's face as she recognized her own words from that night. "Using my lines against me? Is it working?" Raj asked, returning her smile. Priya's answer was to lean across the table and kiss him, a real kiss this time, soft and full of promise. "I'll take that as a yes," Raj murmured when they parted. The news of Raj's decision to relocate to Singapore sent ripples through Innovate Solutions. In the New York headquarters, reactions ranged from shock to concern to quiet understanding. His executive team requested emergency meetings, shareholders asked questions, and business publications ran speculative articles about what this meant for the company's future. Through it all, Raj remained steadfast. In a video conference with his board of directors, he laid out his vision for expanding their Asian market presence, highlighting the strategic advantages of having the founder personally oversee this critical growth phase. "This isn't about stepping back," he assured them. "It's about stepping forward in a direction that will define our next decade of growth." Most were convinced by his business rationale, though a few saw through to the personal motivation. His COO, Vikram, pulled him aside after one particularly tense meeting. "So when do I get to meet the woman who's convinced Raj Mehta to upend his entire life?" he asked with a knowing smile. Raj shook his head. "It's not like that." "Of course not," Vikram replied, unconvinced. "Just remember, whoever she is, she'd better be worth it." Worth it. The phrase echoed in Raj's mind as he finalized the details of his relocation. Was he making the right choice? Moving across the world for a relationship that had begun in a stalled elevator only 6 months ago? On his last night in his New York penthouse, Raj stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, gazing out at the skyline he'd called home for over a decade. The city glittered below him, familiar and yet suddenly distant, as if he were already gone. His phone buzzed with a message from Priya, last night in NYC. Feeling okay? Raj typed back, mixed emotions. You? 3 dots appeared, then, nervous. Happy. Worried you'll regret this. Her honesty was refreshing. Raj called instead of texting back, wanting to hear her voice. Hey, she answered, sounding tired but pleased. I won't regret it, he said without preamble. Whatever happens between us, this is the right move. How can you be so sure? Priya asked. Raj considered the question carefully. Because for the first time in years, I'm making a decision that isn't just about building a bigger company or a larger fortune. It's about building a life I actually want to live. Her soft exhale carried through the phone. No pressure there, she said, but he could hear the smile in her voice. No pressure, he agreed. We take this one day at a time. Figure it out together. Raj's transition to Singapore was smoother than expected. He found a spacious apartment in an older neighborhood, preferring its character to the ultra-modern high-rises favored by most expatriates. The Singapore office welcomed him enthusiastically, energized by having the founder in their midst. Priya maintained her own place, both of them agreeing that despite the significant step Raj had taken, they shouldn't rush the next phases of their relationship. Instead, they settled into a rhythm of regular dinners, weekend adventures, and gradually integrated lives. 3 weeks after his permanent move, Raj invited Priya to his apartment for the first time, cooking dinner himself, a skill he'd secretly been practicing during his trips back to New York. I'm impressed, Priya said, sampling the curry he'd prepared. Hidden talents. Don't be too impressed, Raj admitted. This is literally the only dish I can make. My chef in New York gave me lessons. Priya laughed. At least you're honest about it. After dinner, they moved to the balcony with glasses of wine, enjoying the warm evening air and the distant sounds of the city. I had a call from New York today, Raj said, swirling the wine in his glass. The board wants to know my long-term plans. If this Singapore arrangement is permanent. Priya turned to him, her expression serious. And what did you tell them? That I don't know yet. That I'm taking it 1 quarter at a time. She nodded, looking out at the city lights. Sensible. Very unlike me, Raj added with a small smile. I used to have 5-year plans for everything. What changed? Priya asked, though they both knew the answer. An elevator broke down, Raj said simply. And I met someone who made me question whether I was really going anywhere, despite all my rushing. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of their unlikely journey settling between them. 6 months ago, they had been strangers trapped in a metal box. Now, they were building something neither had planned for. I'm presenting the Tanjong project to the city council next week, Priya said suddenly. Would you come? It's a big moment for me. The invitation was significant. Priya rarely mixed her professional achievements with her personal life. I'd be honored, Raj replied, reaching for her hand. As their fingers intertwined, Raj realized something that both surprised and comforted him. For the first time in his adult life, his most valuable asset wasn't his company or his wealth. It was these quiet moments, this genuine connection, this chance at something real. What are you thinking about? Priya asked, noticing his contemplative expression. Raj smiled. Just calculating returns on investment. And, she prompted, raising an eyebrow. He leaned over to kiss her gently. Best numbers I've ever seen. 1 year to the day after they'd met in that stalled elevator, Raj and Priya stood together on the observation deck of the Marina Bay Sands, looking out over the Singapore skyline at sunset. The city stretched before them, a tapestry of lights beginning to twinkle as dusk deepened. Happy anniversary, Raj said, handing Priya a small box wrapped in simple blue paper. She raised an eyebrow. We agreed no gifts. It's not really a gift, Raj insisted. More of a memento. Curious, Priya unwrapped the package. Inside was a small crystal cube, and suspended within it, a miniature replica of an elevator. She laughed, turning it over in her hands. You're ridiculous, she said, but her eyes shone with affection. I thought about getting something traditional, but nothing seemed right. Raj shrugged. That elevator changed everything for me. For both of us, Priya agreed, leaning against the railing. Though I think we've spent enough time in actual elevators since then. It was true. The past year had seen them navigating not just their relationship but the intertwining of their professional lives. Priya's Tanjong project had been approved, her design praised for its innovation. Construction had begun 3 months ago, with Raj's company providing some of the technological infrastructure, a collaboration that had raised eyebrows in Singapore's business community. I have something for you too, Priya said, reaching into her bag. She pulled out an envelope and handed it to him. Inside, Raj found a key. Is this what I think it is? He asked, looking up at her. Priya nodded. My lease is up next month. I thought maybe it was time we stopped pretending we don't spend every night together anyway. The decision to move in together wasn't spontaneous. They'd been discussing it for months, weighing the practicalities against the desire to maintain independence. Priya's busy schedule with the Tanjong project and Raj's frequent trips across Asia for business had made having 2 separate homes increasingly impractical. But it was more than convenience. The past year had cemented what began as an unlikely connection into something solid and true. They had seen each other at their most vulnerable, Raj during a market downturn that threatened his Singapore expansion, Priya when her father fell ill and she had to rush back to India for 2 weeks. Through crisis and celebration, their bond had only strengthened. I'd like that, Raj said, closing his hand around the key. Your place or mine? I was thinking, neither, Priya replied. Maybe it's time for somewhere that's ours from the beginning. No baggage, no preconceptions. Raj smiled, understanding completely. A fresh start. Exactly. She turned to face the skyline again. I've been looking at some places. There's a riverside apartment with good feng shui and terrible kitchen cabinets. Sounds perfect, Raj said, slipping an arm around her waist. We can fix cabinets. They stood in comfortable silence, watching as the last colors of sunset faded and the city fully embraced the night. Below them, Singapore continued its endless movement, cars flowing along highways, people hurrying along walkways, lives intersecting in countless ways. Do you ever wonder, Priya asked softly, what would have happened if that elevator hadn't broken down? Sometimes, Raj admitted. We might have passed each other in the lobby a dozen times and never spoken. Ships in the night, Priya murmured. But it did break down, Raj said. And here we are. Here they were indeed. Raj's company had doubled its Asian market share in the past year, with the Singapore office becoming a model for their global expansion. Priya's reputation in architectural engineering had soared, with offers coming in from across Southeast Asia for similar projects. But their professional successes, significant as they were, had become just one aspect of lives that now contained so much more. Weekend explorations of remote Indonesian islands. Quiet evenings cooking together in Raj's kitchen. The community of friends they'd built, a mix of locals and expatriates who had become like family. I have a business proposal for you, Raj said suddenly. Priya looked at him skeptically. A business proposal on our anniversary? Well, sort of. Raj turned to face her fully. I've been thinking about creating a foundation. Using some of my resources to fund engineering scholarships for girls in underserved communities. Starting here in Singapore, then expanding across Asia. Priya's eyes widened. That's incredible. I'd need a partner, Raj continued. Someone who knows the field, who could mentor the students, help design the program. A business partner? Priya asked, her voice teasing. Raj smiled. Among other things. As the night breeze washed over them, carrying the scent of the ocean and the distant sounds of the city, Raj marveled at how completely his life had changed in a single year. The driven, isolated man who had entered that elevator 12 months ago would hardly recognize the person he had become, still ambitious, still focused, but with priorities that extended far beyond the next acquisition or market expansion. So, he said, taking her hand. Partners? Priya's smile was all the answer he needed. In everything. They sealed the agreement with a kiss, high above the city where their unlikely story had unfolded, a story that began with a broken elevator and led to something neither of them could have engineered, a shared life, built not on blueprints or business plans, but on the unexpected foundation of perfect timing and an open heart.